And we're live. Welcome everyone to Adara Live. And I am here with this gorgeous, beautiful soul, Nadya, who I have just had the recent pleasure of hearing her speak in Nanaimo, British Columbia. She was flown down to work with a corporation over here, and she did a beautiful job of getting us all really empowered and inspired about reinventing our life and our business primarily, because that's the only way to keep it sort of afloat. So Nadya, everyone has noticed that you've got a huge ass last name, and it's Zhexembayeva, close, yes?
Yes.
And you are known as the Reinvention Guru. So tell us a little bit about this guru status of yours.
Oh my God. I was both exhilarated and terrified the first time it happened, but thank you so much for inviting me. Wonderful to have everyone here live and watching it in replay. So I don't know how anyone becomes a guru. I definitely don't think of myself as a guru. I think my guru days are over before they started, because the whole message that I deliver to the world with reinvention is that anything you know from the past, anything that might have worked for you, that was excellent for you just a few years ago, can actually kill your business today. So your own past successes are no longer helping you, let alone anybody else. And it's both terrifying and exhilarating. So whatever guru status I had a minute ago might be exactly what kills me a minute later.
Very well said. So talk to us a little bit about how the world is changing so quickly, and we are just totally bombarded with information all day, every day, and how the way that we used to do business is no longer the way that you're seeing us move forward in that capacity.
Yeah, so to tell this story, I have to say a few words about my history. I was born in the Soviet Union before the collapse. I think the collapse was the reason I got excited, or terrified, both, about the idea of understanding why something collapses. And because I'm a big fan of business, I truly believe that business as a form of activity is one of the best things we can do for the world. I think business is the agent of world benefit, and most companies and most people work in companies are not monsters who are out there to get profit, but most of the time it's people who are trying to solve problems. So because I love business, because I own businesses, I always focused on why companies collapse. And we've done this massive research on trying to understand why are we so busy as a company. I own a reinvention agency, and for many, many years, we're unable to say yes to most of our potential clients. We say no to 90+% of requests. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Why there's so much demand for helping companies survive? So we started doing research, and here's what we discovered. To my surprise, the speed of change that we're experiencing right now is a relatively recent phenomena. If you look back at the history of the modern capitalism, most of the centuries, our companies had a very stable, prosperous life cycle. So the average life cycle was about 75 years. That meant I could graduate from a college in Nanaimo, and I could start working in a local company, and then I could retire from that company and never see one major change. There would be small upgrades, small changes, but nothing fundamental. And that's where our parents come from, our grandparents, our bosses most of the time come from that paradigm, which is you find one thing you do, you keep doing it, don't rock the boat, don't break what is not broken, don't fix what's not broken, hold on to your jobs, all of those wisdoms that we keep hearing. Unfortunately, that reality ended at the end of 20th century. So we wanted to understand what happened. And about late 1980s, early 1990s, the cycle went from 75 to 15. And this century, we are finishing research for 2019. The average cycle of a company is 7. So if you don't reinvent yourself every few years, you're out of business. And the ability to have predictability we had in the 90s. Maybe you still remember, I really remember the time where you could sign a contract with supplier with fixed price for 3 years, no problem. That time is long gone. Nobody will give you a fixed price for 3 months most of the time, maybe 6 months for a very big supplier, but it is a very volatile environment, and it's a world we haven't seen before.
Well, and something that goes around in the entrepreneurial community is very much the saying of the 5 year in business is kind of your make it or break it. So if you're not still going at 5 years, you're kind of doomed. So that's.
But here's, I think, a secret most of us don't realize.
Excuse me.
Bless you. Most of us don't realize the data is very conclusive. You can only successfully reinvent when you're still in the growth part of your cycle. In the decline part of your cycle, there's excellent study and a good book called Stall Points that researches how companies stall and collapse. They have discovered that if you start reinventing on the decline part of your cycle, the chances of you ever recovering are only 10%. That means we have to constantly break what's not yet broken, right? We have to start a new idea before the current business model have not yet reached its peak. I'll give you an example. I mentioned to you as we were getting to know each other that we lived in Europe for almost 10 years, and we had a very happy, prosperous business with very steady revenues and a great brand. We still live on that brand in Europe, and we still get a lot of requests. And we realized if we don't break it now and we don't move to US now, we will ride that out for a few years, and then the revenues will start shrinking. So your budgets are shrinking, your emotional freedom is shrinking, you are getting scared and anxious, and your team is anxious. Your will to change is shrinking. So we had to make this decision to move right as we were approaching the peak in our business. And I know how scary and painful it is, but if you don't do it on growth part of the cycle, you will most likely decline without any chance to recover.
So you work with huge corporations, massive, like multi-million, billion-dollar companies, and how can this apply to like the small mom and pop, or like the woman entrepreneur who is my group of women who are just wanting to possibly make 6 figures, or maybe they have bigger dreams to get to the quarter mark or $500,000, right? And they have to keep, and because it's us, usually we build businesses that we care, but we're trying to solve a problem, but also it's something that speaks very good to our heart that we want to share. How can we keep working with our own self and our own personality, and also provide a product to our consumers that they're going to want?
Well, the first thing that I suggest is to think about reinvention from the point of view of yourself, your identity, and your career. So a few years ago, when we were just starting up this public effort of ours called Chief Reinvention Officer, the way this title came about and this platform, knowledge platform, was created as I was working with a wonderful specialist in positioning, Mark Levy, who has such clients as Simon Sinek, for example, and other amazing thinkers who put together ideas because of Mark's work. And Mark was pushing me. He was saying, okay, if this was a job inside the company, if what you do was a job inside the company, what would be the title? And I said, well, I don't like Chief Innovation Officer because it's not only about new, it's also about preserving the old. I don't like Chief Transformation Officer because we're just sick and tired of senseless transformation. We need an uplift and direction. So finally, I kind of blubbered this out, Chief Reinvention Officer, and he's like, I think you need to buy your URL today. Let's check if it's free. And that's how we came up with the title. But the whole point of why we refuse to trademark it or do anything around it is that I want you to grab this title. And here's the secret. You don't need to wait for anyone's permission to give you this title. You as an entrepreneur, you as a business owner, first and foremost have to become Chief Reinvention Officer of your life, and then of your business, and then of anything else. So the first thing I would suggest is to change your mindset when it comes to your relationship to change and your view of what change is. Change is naturally terrifying. That's how our bodies are set up. That's how we work. But it's also a beautiful opening to let go of things that no longer serve you. So if you decide to take on this title for yourself, you open up a different relationship to change. And last week, I wrote an article on why we're not going to trademark this, and I featured 3 people who just themselves said, I'm going to call myself Chief Reinvention Officer. And since then, 3 more people sent me their profiles like, that's it, I'm a Chief Reinvention Officer of my life. And I think that's all in our dialogue with our own selves. So for entrepreneurs, the first and foremost, claim the title reinventor. This is who you are. This is who you're born to be. That's why you started the business. You're already a risk taker. You're already a person who is probably more flexible and open. So make it your strength rather than kind of skirt around the issue.
I love it. One thing I will say that small business owners like myself have a difficult time with is sticking with directions, say, or building out a team to help serve us, because we kind of take on the role of all the hats in our company. We're usually the ones that want to do the servicing, because that's why we got into the business to begin with, right? But then it's very difficult for us to be able to step back and have sort of that higher seat in our company, whether we are the CRO or the CEO, and then be able to delegate and build a pyramid, but it kind of is, or I don't know what the next modeling is for business. But how would you say we entrepreneurs, creatives, CROs, grow?
Well, I think the most important thing is to figure out what you can do that creates value and then outsource everything else. So our company, for example, we do service mainly multi-billion-dollar revenue companies, not even multi-million-dollar. And we are still a company of 3 employees. Everything else is a long-term partnership on an outsourced contract, which creates a kind of co-ownership relationship with everyone who works. And we have about 100 people who are in one way or another are subcontractors for us. What we do is we're constantly looking for a way to streamline. So calendar, instead of running your calendar, setting up a free Calendly account and making sure that it all streamlined and connects to your calendar. Marketing, there's more and more very inexpensive, very affordable resources like Gen M is trending right now, which is this platform that allows kids to get marketing internship, and you get a marketing intern for $50 a month with very high quality interns. Yes, you have to sweat and go through like 20 interviews to find one gem, but Gen M, $49 a month, and you have a social media manager for yourself. This is a commitment to understanding where your own time is valuable and where it's not, and only doing things that you're really, really good at and really being lean around everything else. So we in our company, we don't do our own finance and accounting, exception of strategic finance. We don't do our own IT. We don't do our own marketing. We just deliver what we're good at, which is strategy and reinvention. Everything else is outsourced. And here I think is the biggest secret. I learned it from a business school president where I used to be a chaired professor. And she would always say, Nadya, remember, first-class people bring first-class people. Second-class people bring third-class people. And this is the real secret. So when you're hiring a person, you think, okay, can I bring a junior person or somebody who is weaker than me in, so it's easier for me to control. But people who are not at the top of the game, because of insecurity, will also drag even lower capability next to them. And I'm talking only about capability. So this is not in any way to measure of the soul of the person or their spirit or anything else. Just from the point of view of just personal competence. When you bring the most competent person, that person will always want to work with most competent people. So if you hire one super competent, they will cover 10 mediocre competencies. But if you hire in one mediocre, that person will also drag in even lower mediocrity in terms of competence. So you're stuck with tons of people who kind of don't know what they're doing. And in that sense, we've been extremely consistent on hiring only first-class competence and then that one person for us covers tons and tons and tons of work, and they are always open to learning. So just as I say to my 16-year-old daughter who says, "Mom, how do I do that?" And my first answer is Google it. So she doesn't even roll her eyes anymore. She's like, "Okay, Mom, I Googled it and I still cannot find the answer." So if the person is not capable to first go through the motions and try to figure it out, it's probably not a good choice for small business entrepreneurship, because then you're constantly babysitting and you are not in a position. You can do a lot of babysitting in a big company because it has money to cover training for juniors. But for you, probably best idea to stick with real focus.
And would you know, just on my last sort of finishing off our time together, I'm just curious, with you working with multi-billion-dollar companies to working with a small one-person show, I mean, what are some of the differences? Like, sometimes we really wish to grow to that level, but I also think that it does take a lot more responsibility, and obviously you have lots of employees that you're responsible for. Like, it's a whole other life and probably a whole other game, or is it very similar? I don't know.
It depends on the position inside the company. It depends on many different things. I think most people who work in entrepreneurship start because they love a particular product or service. They have a solution for somebody's problem and they're product driven. There's some number of entrepreneurs who just in the job of making money, but that's a very small minority. When you look at the big corporation, there are tons of people there who are not product driven. There might be process driven. They like organizing things. They like creating systems and checks and controls. So there is pluses and minuses of both, and I think there is a room for both. But what I see is there is a particular kind of people that live regardless of organizational structure, whether they're intrapreneurs or entrepreneurs living outside of the company. They're the same kind. They're proactive. They are greater risk. Their risk appetite is greater. They're more positive and optimistic. They're more, go-getters. And they can live inside or outside of a company and do well equally. And then there is a group of people who want predictability, who wants, 5 to 9, or 9 to 5.
Yeah, or whatever.
Hopefully 9 to 5, not 5 to 9. That's a very long workday. Who want this predictable, I leave my work at work. Yeah, I leave my tasks at work. I come home. I never bring it home. That's not going to be us. Entrepreneurship never stops. You fall asleep and you wake up with an idea that never stops. So I think there is a respect and room for both. There's no need to poop on somebody's parade. If they are meant to work in corporate world, great. I know I cannot, but I love working with big organizations because I understand that one day of my life influences a huge trickle of thousands and thousands of people. So it's a great impact.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting. In my video company with my husband, I'm very much the entrepreneur and he's sort of like the worker, which is so important because I obviously need someone to do the work. But yeah, 4 o'clock hits or 5 o'clock hits and it's like done for him, where I'm like always mulling over like, what's the next product I'm going to put out? Or like, what's that ad going to be? Or, it just doesn't stop. And we have like a total rule that like when we're in the bedroom, like, with reading books, it's like, you do not talk about work. I get in trouble because I check my email and I'm like, oh shit, and you'd be like, what? And I'm like, nothing, we'll talk tomorrow. And then it'd be like, you did it to me.
And that's also, I think, a big question for entrepreneurs is how do we want to balance or not balance? And by balance, I don't mean equal. I mean, how do we want to create an ebb and flow of the relationship between our work and our life, which is so intertwined, right? Yeah. So how do you find this relationship with your kids or your spouses or your parents or your friends, which is maybe they're on a completely different schedule or maybe their priorities are different. So that's a issue that many people working in corporations don't see. There's pluses and minuses on both. There's really, I think that's the beauty of things. We can't choose. We have so many choices.
We have so many choices, and I would say that is the beauty. And it's also hindrance for someone like myself who is so creative and loves, can kind of grasp onto anything and run with it, right? I'm a go-getter. And so it has been a definite challenge for me to really like hone in with like what it is that I really want to do. And because we were talking, I know our 20 minutes is up, oh my gosh, but we were talking about how your life has sort of flourished in this way or blossomed with you being a speaker and author. And there was all these things that you could never predict were going to happen for yourself. And it just sort of by chance and by people you met and just like, I don't know, this universal flow kind of happening for you, right? And it's very difficult, I think, for us to settle into, I don't know, what would you say to people? Say this. So somebody has an amazing idea or mission, for instance, and what they want to contribute to the world, a solution, like you're saying. And then how do you stick so strongly in that solution that, but you also allow for like the tree branches to go where they need to go for the people to come to them? Like, how would you say would be the best flow to get to where you want to go?
Well, there's a philosophical answer to that, and there's very pragmatic answers to that. Philosophically, I think it's about rooting yourself in few things that are not negotiable, that are uncompromisable. So every time I do speeches on the speed of change and I draw these life cycles and show how you need to reinvent every few years, people come up to me and say, so does it mean that I need to reinvent my values or my identity or my mission? And the answer is absolutely not, because the speed of change means that you need to manage continuity as much as you manage change, so you don't throw the baby with the bathwater. So knowing those 2-3 things that you are about, that are uncompromisable, that no matter what you do will always be present, is one place to which you come back again and again and say, is this who I am? Is this what my mission is about? Or is this just a fun, interesting idea that is actually somebody else's job? Because if you don't make choice of who you are about and what you're about, somebody else will make that choice for you. So making sure that you make that choice and you come back to that choice on a regular basis. That's first thing. And that's where we go to the technical answer. Coming up with a system, whether it's putting in your calendar right now, get your phone and putting in your calendar right now, a regular monthly check-in where you sit with yourself and say, every last Friday of the month, I look at my priorities and my mission and strategy and say, what do I say no to today? Because I think it was Warren Buffett who said that what separates very successful people from successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. So the discipline of saying no to almost anything and everything, especially for creative, excited types like myself as well. I'm like a puppy. Okay, a balloon, and bone, a bone. Okay, so that sticking to that discipline, you can go to more complex systems like creating a Scrum board and a system for yourself when you run sprints. Look into that. That's a system of sprints that are managed through Scrum board, all come from Scrum Agile movement. Absolutely recommended. This is what we do also for our family. But you can do both. Philosophically and technically, it should be a discipline. It cannot be just something that you check in with once every 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Nadya, you're so funny. You're just such a fun, vibrant, beautiful, just, you say the cutest little things. And I just think you're just a doll. He also is giving us and our viewers a business model cards, which I think is super cool. So basically you can take one product you were saying and you can give 15 or so ways that you can
I don't know how many we have in the kit. I think maybe 15 right now, the most known business cards, but so far we collected also a little bit more. I think that's the most important thing. I think most entrepreneurs are kind of stuck with the idea of how can I make money. So we created cards that you can print and cut out and sit with in front of you and say, okay, which of these different ways of making money can work for my business? And we did these exercises with things like books and teaching and consulting and saying, okay, how would that look like? Oh, mattresses. We once did it with mattresses, including renting mattresses rather than selling them. How would this look like in either product or service business? So we did make that available also for everyone. You can download the cards, print them out, play with them, get your team, get your friends, have some wine and go through the motions and debate what that looks like in your industry.
I love that. That's a great start to reinventing. So I think that's very awesome. Thank you so much, Nadya, for coming on the show. And I hope everyone got a little something out of it. I'm sure you did. I mean, she gave us some really good resources, which I will post under there. And I will also have the landing pages to get those business model cards. She also had a one-on-one. Where do I get this 101 plus free reinvention? Oh, the Reinvention resource page.
Yeah. So another thing that I know for entrepreneurs, money is tight. So we put together 101 resources for reinvention that requires zero money down. So either it's apps that have free versions or it's free resources and tools. It's things I use myself. For example, there's an app called Self-Control. So I'm notorious for starting to write something and then checking my Facebook and then disappearing in my Facebook. So this app blocks anything for X number of hours, and no matter what you do, it doesn't unblock it, and it's completely free. So stuff like that is what is on this list, is all kind of free software reports and so on, and you have a link for that as well. It's just a PDF collection of things I personally use for reinvention that costs nothing.
Thank you. I love that. And then my little 2 bits for you that I've noticed. I love your website, but I was thinking if you did have sort of like a manifesto that I could sign that says I will be a CRO, in my company, and what that means that I will dedicate myself to, and then somehow like sign off on it. And then maybe I get like a printout or something just to remind myself of my terms of being that, right? And then I also can see this obviously being a book, and I can also see this being a course, just saying.
Thank you so much. So I will think about how to make that happen. I love that idea.
Okay, I will help you if you need. Oh, Nadya, thank you again so much. And I will post all your info below. And if anyone's interested in learning more, you know where to find her.
Absolutely. Thank you guys all so much for coming over, and thank you for the interview. Lovely to connect again.
You as well. Bye.
Bye.
You don't have